Hello folks, this is part 2 of our field nursery trip. The tree I'll be working on now is a wing-barked elm. It's a really neat species of elm. It's native, I believe, to North America. And if you look at these branches, the branches over time develop this big flat wing shape, as well as the trunk has very, very craggy bark, even more craggy than corkbark elm in some cases. This tree's approximately 10 feet tall. It's got about a 4.5 to 5 inch caliper trunk. We're going to use the same techniques that we did on the trident maple to reduce the root ball of this tree, even though it's not a ball and burlap tree. It's in a 25-gallon nursery container. It's going to be a little harder because first thing we got to do is remove the nursery container. We'll probably just cut it away from the root ball of the tree. Got to be a little careful though. In the spring, when this thing was growing, when it was given to me by the nursery, it was full of fire ants. It's since been treated twice. Hopefully all the fire ants are gone. If not, we're in for a surprise. I'm going to probably reduce this tree to here. Just like any other elm tree, this thing will bud back profusely down low. And we'll see what we get. If it makes a tree, that's awesome. If not, no risk is no reward. We didn't gain or lose anything by doing this tree other than our time. So the first thing we're going to do is get it cut out of the pot here to expose the root ball, and then we'll reduce the root ball. We'll reduce the height of the tree. We'll wash out the roots, get it in a plastic bag, and we'll continue this one as well when we get back to the workshop. Okay, we're back in the workshop with this wing-barked elm. Just to recap, what we've done so far on this tree is get it out of the container that it's been growing in its whole life. The reason I know this is a container-grown tree is because the soil that it was in was a potting type soil. It wasn't a potting soil that you would see in a tropical plant or a house plant type potting soil. It was a nursery type potting soil. And of course the owner verified that yes, this tree had been container grown its entire life. We reduced the root ball, we reduced the height of the tree, and now we have it back in the workshop. As you can see on this tree as well, it has a really nice nabari here. It's got 3 or 4 main roots. Actually, there's one down underneath here as well on this side that come out radially. The back side, haven't really exposed much of it yet. I think the other side is going to be the front of the tree based on what I can see so far at this point in time. Only time will tell. What we're going to do with this tree from here is we're going to chase back some of these roots. Do a little work on the underneath of it as well, where the few tap roots that were in the pot grew. It has quite a few radial roots, but there were a few roots that grew straight down in the pot and then just did this number in the pot for who knows how long. So we need to go ahead and do some work on that as well so we can get it flat and get the root ball as shallow as possible, so when this is ready to go into a bonsai pot, it will be able to, because the root base it'll be a nice compact but dense pad of roots all the way around the tree. It is a wing-barked elm. It has the corky bark of a corkbark elm, but as I showed you before, it does have wings. Interesting thing I've noticed about this tree is this is an outer bark. The outer bark is now peeling away, and this really craggy looking, gnarly looking bark is underneath it. The whole side of this, I guess the primary barking, which is this stuff here, has all peeled away from this side, and you can see this really craggy, gnarly looking bark, which is kind of cool. Hoping it continues to do that throughout its life, which would be really neat. I don't see why it wouldn't. But that's what we're going to do for now. I need to work on this root base. It's very, very fibrous, very dense. We've got tons and tons of feeder roots. This tree is very healthy. We don't have any thick clay-like soils to deal with on this tree. So it's just a matter of chasing the roots back, getting the root work done that needs to be done. I'm going to leave quite a bit of this fine feeder root mass on here just to help with hopefully this thing back budding. If it's anything like the Chinese elm, and we'll find out soon enough, it'll probably just end up back budding around the cut site. If that's the case, that's not a problem. What I'll do is let it do that this year to go ahead and gain some strength, and then next year we'll cut this thing back at an angle, maybe somewhere in here, or maybe do another broom style like my other cork bark elm. I don't necessarily want to do another broom style tree. This one does have a little bit of movement. You really can't see it. It also looks like it kind of has some reverse taper, but it has a lot to do with the this bark. I mean, this bark just swells up and starts peeling off everywhere, which is really neat. It's a nice little trait of this species of tree, as well as, you know, when the branches do form, they have these spindles or these wings on them as well, and that's where it gets its name from. So we'll go ahead and get to work on this one. Chase the roots back. I'll do a 360 of it now so you can see it, and we'll do some root work and whatnot, and we'll revisit this one after I get done with that. Get it into a growing container and let it do its thing. Keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully it'll back bud. This one doesn't have a trunk quite as large on it as the trident maple we've just done. I can actually touch my fingers around the base of this one, where the trident maple I was unable to. But it's still a really nice caliber trunk, and I'm not complaining because the tree was actually free to me. The nursery owner that I got this from, and if any of you are in Columbia, it's called Apple Tree Nursery. It had been in his stock for the past 10 years. He hadn't really sold it to anyone. I guess nobody really liked the gnarly bark on it, which I would love it. So he offered it to me. I bought the trident maple from him, and he said, hey, I have something else I think you might be interested in, and showed me this tree, and the rest is history. So we'll get started on this tree, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, the root trimming has been complete. I have the tree sit in a growing container that it's going to be in for the next few years. This one, there were quite a bit more fibrous roots on this tree than there were on the trident maple, due to it being container grown versus grown in the ground and then balled and burlapped. I'm going to go ahead and backfill this with soil, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully she'll give us some back budding, and we'll be able to see what happens with this and what happened. The trees that you've been seeing up to this point, with the exception of this tree and the trident maple, this same technique was done to them 2 years prior. And so this is kind of my beginning stage, or my first technique that I utilize to get the trees that I have currently. And then, of course, once they bud out, I let them grow free for 2 years and do nothing to them other than feed them and fertilize them. And that's where all the other videos that you've seen up to this point have been, were the 2-year-old trees. So we'll follow these 2 trees as well as they progress, and we'll see what they bring. Thanks for watching.